And welcome back to the 12th man. Delighted to welcome three top Spurs fans on for this Tottenham Hotspur special as we have a massive cup final coming up on Sunday. Some people say that Spurs don't have a history, they aren't a big club. I've got three men on to tell you why that's the biggest lie you'll ever hear. So glad to have his way. He's on 350 grand a week and he's literally doing live streams on Twitter during a game like it's embarrassing.
It's madness, like, so much pleasure out getting friends and stuff together. Like, so, not even
So only one quick start for me. I'd like to hear the Sunday, the one on Saturday. My opinion is like a game every
not saying like it's the team never got play, but it's good the way they have done.
Well, everyone, delighted to have you next hour. So much to talk about. One of the questions everyone always asks me is how did you start supporting Spurs when you're from Derry? So I'm delighted to have three top Spurs fans on. They have a great discussion on the club that we love. We've got a big cup final coming up on Sunday, and we're really all looking forward to it. So I'm going to start. We're all debut guests as well. So I'm going to welcome the first one, my dad, Gareth. Great to welcome you to the show. It's obviously something that I've wanted to do for a while. So it's great to have you on. And I just love to know how you started supporting Spurs. I know it's something that we've talked about before, but it's a great story, and I'm sure everyone would like to hear about it.
Well, look, thanks for having me on. And before we go any further, Gareth, congratulations on the podcast, because you're doing a great job on it, and it's always usually like one biased, and it's usually grand. Hope it keeps going on. And I'll say the nice thing, you and so far, because you always want to know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm going to. No, my first memory of Spurs was had to be the 1981 Cup final, and that wonder goal by Ricky Villa. And I mind it was a replay, and the first match was 1-1, and then that game, I think Spurs won 1-1.
One second there. There's a bit of feedback on somebody's site. I might be yours, Michael. 1 wee second. I'll just bring you back on. Yeah, it is Michael's side. So
how's that?
That's far better. Michael, let's start again, guys.
I was the replay. The match was like Spurs went up 1-0. Man City goals and then Man City went ahead 2-1. In the 70th minute, Gareth Crooks scored to make it 2-each, and then the wonder goal, like they're still showing that every like FA Cup final today.
One of the greatest ever FA Cup goals.
Aye, and it ended up I actually met that full team not so long afterwards, so that sort of made me. That was me then. I was a Spurs fan through and through, and I've always been since.
Yeah.
Always will
Sorry,
be.
Michael, I just had to pull you out there because the feedback, it's very hard to hear. See if you can get that sorted out and I'll bring you back on. Jared, we'll come to you. What was your why did you start supporting Spurs? That's a question that people always ask me every time. Spurs, really? And so what about you?
Same as your dad. Just before you go to with the question you're asking me, Gareth, I'm delighted to be on your show. I've seen you had a few guests on from the Spurs chats in London and big crackers, and the other guy, I can't mind his name, but Chris, brilliant, and they hold you in good regard now. So you're doing the right thing and you're doing a good job. So I want to commend you for what you're doing.
Appreciate that, fellas.
No problem. The first Spurs to me was the same as your dad. 1980. Spurs wasn't my first love. I don't know. I never really watched football. I think it was probably 1979 was the first FA Cup final that I mind watching, and I was sitting with my granddad, and Arsenal was playing United, and Alan Sunderland scored the winner for Arsenal. I mind crying because I was really anti. The next winning weeks, I started to watch McIlroy, Gordon McQueen, and things like that. And then the two Argentinians just come over and just lit up the league, and that was me. I was Spurs.
Just tell us about that, right? Because some people might not realise at that time how big that was, because Argentina just won the World Cup in 1978.
Yeah.
You had Ricky Villa and Ozzy Ardiles. Tell us about the time that everyone knew about these players, and Spurs always have a famous history for attracting.
Well, as I say, probably for a Spurs fan that was supporting Spurs in '79, that was some feat. Like to get, especially two Argentinian internationals that just played at the World Cup, but more so Ozzy than Ricky. But it was some body Spurs to get them, and it brought players like Hoddle, Hazard, Falco, even the players at the back. It must have been some time for them, you know what I mean? But I mean, because of the news, probably at that time, you would only get 2 news bulletins a day, and these two guys the same for Spurs, and then that made me go and watch Spurs, when I could, in the TV, and I seen Hoddle, and Hoddle just blew me away. It wouldn't even have been the two Argentinians then. It was Hoddle. Hoddle was just out of this world. He was the closest person I've ever seen to Hoddle is Berbatov. You know what I mean? With that close skill and close
very
control.
good technically.
It was the same as your dad. 80, 81 just started for me then.
Yeah, I'm going to take you back even further now, lads. Probably I don't know any Spurs fans that support the club as well as this man does. Mikey, tell us about why you started supporting Spurs. A really loyal fan that you support the club through thick and thin. And it's an honour to have you on here.
Your mic's not live, Michael.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Started supporting Spurs in the early 60s. Funny enough, the first shirt I ever was bought in my life was actually a Wolverhampton Wanderers shirt, which my dad was working in England at the time. And he was based in a place called Telford, which is between Shrewsbury and Wolverhampton. And he was actually only a half an hour from Molyneux. So the first shooter I ever got was 1964, but we moved to Chantal in 66. And I was probably one of the only men in Chantal with a shirt at the time. So we met a boy called John Harkin.
Yeah.
He had this Spurs shirt with a cockerel on it. I didn't know the meaning of it. But I always fancied the shirt. So my Uncle Jim landed back with my father one time from England, and he asked me did I like the wool shirt, and I says no, don't like it. So I sent for John Harkin that day, and he came over to the house with the shirt on, and lo and behold, my Uncle Jim, father's brother, sent me one there back in 66, 67.
And that just drew your attention then?
Funny enough, at that stage in Chantala, everybody was either a Leeds fan or a Manchester United fan.
Yeah.
Me and John Harkin were probably, and a guy called Paddy Travers, who his father Barney, God rest him, was a great footballer. I think he played for Derry City. So me and Paddy Travers and John Harkin, from my memory, were probably the first 3 Spurs fans in Chantala. And I've been following them since. Never got to see them. Actually, a funny story. We listened to the 1967 Cup final on our radio, believe it or not. I was only 5 or 6 at the time. But that's all you had then. You had no TVs, you had nothing, you know.
Yep.
But been following them, for want of a better word, penance, since, you know.
Yep.
But if they get out of the stadium morning league, I'll still be there.
Yep, and that's the beauty of football.
That's the beauty of it.
Boys, gonna take you to your first live game. I'm gonna come back to you, Gareth. You know, everyone always remembers their first live game. So what was yours?
Well, for me, my first live game was when Spurs won the cup in '81. They went into Europe and they got drew against Dundalk at Oriel Park. So, and I was taken back. Why I'm a Spurs fan too. It was probably Mickey. Probably drummed it on me. You know,
Yep.
you know, when I was younger. But anyway, Mickey took me to the match. But Dundalk had a centre forward called Hilary Carlisle from Derry.
Yeah.
And you might know his brother Paul Carlisle played for Derry for years there. But Hilda was a centre forward for Dundalk at the time. So after the match, he got us up under the players' lounge, and I was only I'd have been what 6 or 7, and so I got to meet them all after the match, and I got to meet the Clements was Nets. You had Glenn Hoddle, you had at the back Gary Mabbitt, Tony Galvin. Do you know what I mean? You had Perryman, you had Chris Houghton, Tony Galvin, as I say too, was Irish, and then you had Thea, you had Ardiles, Archibald. You know what I mean? Like, and he had all these top players. So that was my first game.
Yeah.
As I said, that was like October. Spurs had won the cup in May. In October time, I met the whole team. And then if I wasn't,
see on that as well. Just tell us about the beauty of the European Cup at the time. You know, it's all changed now. Some people might not realise what it meant back then. We've seen about this week with Derry in that programme, you know, about them playing Benfica. And you were talking to me about it, about how big it was at the time. You know, how massive was it winning the FA Cup to get into the European Cup?
I mean, like, alone, like FA Cup Day alone was the biggest day in the year. It was like nearly bigger than winning the league, winning the cup at the time. Like, and if you won both in the same year, it was like, you know, but the FA Cup at the time, and like taking you back before like Champions League, you had the European Cup, and you only get on it if you won your league, and then next to that you had the UEFA Cup, and you only get on that if you finish second. So I mean, it was nearly as hard, or even sometimes harder, to win the UEFA Cup than it was to win the European Cup. You know, because it was all top teams. Like, and if you go through the history of the UEFA Cup, like it's all like winners like Real Madrid, Liverpool, Spurs, Man United, you know, Barcelona, all the big teams. Like, and then when the Champions League came on, it devalued not only the rest of the European competitions, but it wrecked the likes of the FA Cup, and it wrecked the like of, you know.
Well,
like,
it's the money involved, isn't it? That finishing fourth.
You've seen that there story the other day. Like Benfica were, the time they played there, they were the biggest club in Europe.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But like since the money man came on and the Champions League, it has devalued everything. You know, finishing top four now is a bigger thing than winning the FA Cup, which is shocking.
Yeah, and what was the score that day? Just before we move on,
Dundalk 1 each.
1 each, great game.
And then Spurs went on. They won the second leg, 1-0.
Very good. That just shows the Irish teams were able to put up a fight back in. You seen Derry taking Benfica as well, very closely in that game. Jared, what about you? Your first live game and sort of famous players that you've met?
First live game, it was very close to home. It was the Brandywell, 90. Actually went with my grandfather. He actually got me and him a ticket. Went to watch that. The crowd, I can't remember on the day when he was there. It was packed house. Like Derry was, like I went to see them. I went to see Notts Forest at the Brandywell. At that time, big Johnny Medcalf just scored a free kick, I think, in the semi-final of that season. I mean, the one he bowled on the net. And as I say, it was Spurs at the Brandywell. You know, Lineker and Gascoigne was there. Gascoigne from the start just attacked Derry, and Naheem was playing. It's like they had some side like in the 90s. And you know, it was great for the city, and I'm sure Mickey was there too. Were you, Mickey?
I was actually in America. I played Colin Hughes that year. funny enough. But I remember the game. You know,
I
I wasn't at the game, but I remember it.
There was some buzz around the town, like Gareth. You're young, like you wouldn't have.
I wouldn't have
Too, like there was some buzz around the town. Like there was two big glamour friendlies that Derry City had, was Notts Forest and Spurs in that time. Like, and nobody wanted to come to Northern Ireland in the 90s. Like we're still in the middle of the, like, you know what I mean? And Spurs, to be fair to Spurs, they brought their big players, like But first live game at the Lane, if we're talking about seeing Spurs at the Lane, was George Graham. That was 2000. It was a 0-0 draw.
I was going to say very similar to how it was this season. Park of us football.
Aye, George Graham was just. You want to see the team? Like when you look at the team we had that day, I remember, like me and our Charlie went. It was our first trip, and we were on what end were we on? What was the end we were on the night of the Wigan game? I can't remember them ends now when you talk about it. Gareth.
So South
Stand. I will. Where the way was next to you. We were just at the divide, and I'd never been to a London derby, and I remember the hatred. Because we were right on the divide.
Sorry, who were they playing?
West Ham. And I mind saying to it was funny. Like I mind saying to the policeman, he was on a horse, and I says to him, "Hey, you're lucky you're not in our country. You wouldn't be sitting on a horse. You'd be sitting in an armored tank, like you know what I mean." And he says to me, "Show me your ticket." And I showed him the ticket. He says, "You're on with the West Ham fans," and I says, "You're having me on." He says, "No, I'm telling you." But he was near enough, right? But I mean, like we had Sol Campbell. I just took a few notes and names. We had Tom Sherwood, Les Ferdinand, we had Ledley King, we had Chris Perry, and I think Chris Perry and Sol Campbell played defence that night. Like you know what I mean? But it was.
Ginola was there as well.
Ginola was there, and playing for West Ham, you had Joe Cole, and you had Rio Ferdinand was playing centre half. So they had a good team. I don't think it was Harry. I'm not sure if it was Harry was managing them. But that was my first induction to the Lane, like in atmosphere. I'd seen Gaelic atmospheres and seen Derry City atmosphere, but the atmosphere that night for London Derby was unreal, and that's it. Caught you then, like.
Yeah, Michael. You as well. Your first live game. Maybe talk a bit more about the time you took me dad to Dundalk as well. You'd have been a bit older. You'd be able to remember it a bit more. And then some of the famous players that you've met.
Well, my first live game ever seeing Tottenham was, funny enough, at Old Trafford, December 1978. United beat them 2-0. Sammy McElroy scored, and a guy called Mickey Thomas. At that time in the 70s, as you were touching on, Jared, you never got English teams over during the Troubles. And it was very rarely, too, that we ventured over to England, because it was a nightmare getting out in England. But funny enough, my mate Jimmy McLaughlin was in the Man United Derry Supporters Club. And he got me an invitation as a guest. So over we went to Old Trafford. It was actually in the Stratford End, believe it or not. And I got abuse from I got on the bus to get back. But funny enough, we were staying in a hotel in Manchester. First player I ever met, professional player, was Lou McCarry, because the United Supporters Club brought him that night. Meeting players, well, as I say, I took Gareth for that match. And funny enough, I was an insurance man, my United Friendly Insurance, and how I actually got the tickets was, well, my brother-in-law, Jimmy McCartney, was very friendly with Hulda, but I used to collect insurance with him. And I mind going on to his house, collecting insurance every Monday. And he has a picture of, I would say the size of this here, with him and Pelly on it, because he played against Pelly, So it's up this massive picture, And he played against Eusebio too, He was a great player in his time, fantastic player. But to be fair to him, I said, right, Mick, we'll get these tickets. And it was me, yourself, Gareth, Jimmy McCartney, and Joe Healy, who was another great footballer in his time. We all had it down, as I say. We got onto the club rooms after it, met everybody. But and Gareth, actually, I bought Gareth a ring for it, and we took him up. We were up in the right and bang in the middle of the big stand. You actually started crying, Gareth, because I lifted you up on my shoulders. I think you were going fucking bottom hand, but so hard he lifted you down again, But funny enough, we'd never had any cameras in them days. And Joe Healy had a wee autograph book with him. because we weren't expecting to meet the team, and all of a sudden I see Glenn Hoddle walking on, Keith Bergenshaw, the manager, the whole lot, Villa or Lille. So we were scribbling around me about a pen to get Gareth a few other guys, But actually, a belter after that, me and Mark McConnell went to, I think it was 2005. Bohemians were playing Spurs at Daily Mount Park.
Yep.
And me and Mark and a wee boy Luz just to watch his old home, Patrick McLaughlin, young Patrick. And we took Mark's son and we pulled around on the front of Daily Mount Park. We were there a good 3 hours ahead of match because our plan was to meet the team if we could, get the wee boys a couple of pictures. And me and McConnell was sitting, there was hundreds outside the front of Daily Mount Park. So we drove round a one-way system round the back, met this boy in a high-vis jacket, Dublin man, and I said, look, any chance of getting parking? He says, it'll be a tenner on you, 10 punch, I says, park on there. And we pulled onto this car park, right behind Dynamite Park. And I'm not exaggerating, McConnell will confirm this. We just got out of the car, and the team bus just pulled on beside us, right beside us. I mean, my car was next to the team bus. And the first man that jumped out was Robbie Keane. Hoddle was managing them at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Hoddle jumped out, then came Sheringham. And we got all the photos. We had a camera with us at that stage, you know what I mean? But there was hundreds around the front.
Yeah, that we're didn't see.
We were going to bring the team on the front, but they actually rerouted them around the back, and just by pure luck, we just happened to be there. Good timing, So lucky enough, they made a lot of Spurs players,
Yeah, I suppose for me it was obviously my dad was a Spurs fan. It was pretty evident that that was the team that was going to be for me. And I remember he saying to me when I was younger, like when I was in primary school, I had the chance to change if I wanted to. Because I was young and no one held it against me. You can't change when you're older. But I think at that time, Spurs were just coming onto a bit of a period where where Martin Yall. I think the game I always remember was the 5-1 against Arsenal. Incredible night at White Hart Lane. Some of the football Spurs played that night, and then they only won the cup. It was a big thing at the time. And suppose it was the foundations that we put in place for where we are now. That period of 2005 onwards, 2006, Spurs really started striding up the table. Becoming a top six club and then top 4 and stuff. So that's it for me. That it was a family connection, and there was just something about Spurs as well that I liked. The great traditions always had. We never won, as we always say with trophies. They've just evaded us at times, but we always played great football. Always have had superstar players. We've went to other clubs, and been legends there as well. So no, it was an easy decision for me, and it's definitely not one that I ever look back and regret. Boys, moving on. Talk about some of the highs and lows as being a Spurs fan over the years. Going back to you, Gareth. Some people say that Spurs aren't a big club and Spurs don't have a big history. Obviously we don't believe that to be true. So just for anyone that's watching, supporting all our clubs, tell us why that's a big myth.
Well, even like this last week there was talk about a Super League, and back when Sky put out the Premier League, they consulted the 5 biggest clubs in England at the time were Spurs, United, Liverpool, Everton, and Arsenal. And even go back before that, Spurs have always been a massive club. They're the first English team to won anything in Europe at all, and then they're the first team to do the double. They're the first team to bring in foreign players. Spurs have always been a massive, massive club, and they still are. They're a massive club, and there's Spurs would be like in England, Spurs are an institution. They are, and especially within London, they're massive in London. The biggest club in London by far, fan base, and even there's nobody new in London. Since the Premier League came on, Spurs have struggled, to be honest. But you just can't say you're not a big club because you haven't done well in the Premier League. You know what I mean? But,
yeah. I think the one thing that people criticise them for the lack of trophies. Obviously we haven't had the great past. The last 20 years hasn't been as successful as the previous 20. What do you put that down to? Do you put that down to a wee bit of bad luck? We've seen some great teams over them years. Finishing higher in the table than some of them teams before. does winning cups, should that be the bar of success? I mean, you talked about it last night. Arsenal went 10 years without a trophy from 2004 to 2014 with some great players. Liverpool won trophy from 2007 to 2019 when they won the Champions League final against Spurs. So it's not easy always to win them trophies, is it?
Well, I mean, like, the Spurs have always been knocking on the door, but I mean, very rarely have they walked through it in the last 20 years. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Barring like maybe two cups.
Yeah.
So I mean, as I say, like, a successful season is finishing in the top 4.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's all changed. But for me, like, I would take a cup any day of the week over finishing top 4. Still,
yeah.
I mean, I would take this cup tomorrow, and then if somebody give me the choice this week, do you want to finish top 4, or do you want to beat Man City in the League Cup final? And for me, all day it will be won the cup.
Yeah. Jared, coming to you. Same sort of question. A lot of people say that we're not a big club; we support a small club. Why is that so wrong to say?
They should love our lives then have been Spurs fans, and we could soon tell them that we're not a small club, because we have been with them the whole way through the dire 90s. And that was, as Mickey says, he was, thank God he's away probably turned, because hard watching the 90s, like, you know what I mean? Well, apart from 91 and them and Gaza left us, like, it was different then, like, and chairman's taking over, Sugar, and then Hank Yannick come on in the late 90s in. But no, we are a big club. We were the first English team ever to win a European trophy. The younger generation, I know maybe Gareth, you get a bit of ribbon because you're the next generation down, but anybody that's older than me and I ever chatted to about Spurs, they've always said to me, I remember when, like, I made my father-in-law saying to me, never supported Spurs, but saying Spurs were the best team to watch in the 60s and 70s. You know what I mean? And that's part of the history. As Gareth says, that the Champions League has changed now for this last 10, 12 years, for everybody. In them days, it was just Spurs, the likes of Chelsea didn't, even Man City weren't even in it then, you know what I mean? Like, our history was there from the 60s and 70s, from Bill Nicholson took us on, then Keith Birkinshaw took us to the other, and we were so close even with Jerry Francis, David Pleat took us to third, you know what I mean? So, we were always thereabouts, apart from the years of Christian Gross, and then with the influences from the chairman coming on, when Martin Yall had the best chance of bringing us a bit of silverware, and they took it off him and gave it to Wandy Ramos, and who nearly got us relegated. And then after that, it was Harry Redknapp come on, and like Harry built us up, and we could talk. Them teams were great too. But at the end of the day, Jimmy Greaves was our record goal scorer. He's got the biggest record in the Premier League for the most goals ever scored. And who's going to pass it? There's only one player, and it's going to pass it. It's not going to be nobody from any other club than Harry Kane. Harry Kane's the only man that'll ever beat that record. And I know, and Jimmy Greaves said that, like, you know what I mean? That's some feat, the amount of goals. Shearer couldn't do it. And look at Shearer. Shearer's at a club in Newcastle that I would say his biggest thing he ever done was won the league with Blackburn Rovers. Or when it was Newcastle, they beat us in the semi-final of the cup, but then they get beat in the final. Like, you know what I mean? They underachieved. We underachieved. There are times we didn't have a bit of luck, but to say that we're not a big club is, unless you're maybe 15 or 14 and you're looking at it that way, that's different. But we're a big club, and we always have been a big club. We're the best stadium in the world too. So a lot of fans will never see a stadium like ours. We've all been lucky. We've been over to the new stadium. You know what I mean? So there'll be a lot of fans that'll never see a stadium as good as that there. Like.
Yeah, Mikey, coming to you, people seem to think that football didn't start until 1992 when the Premier League came on. People seem to pick history that suits them when they talk about their club. And you're supporting Spurs longer than any of us here, probably longer than most people watching. And you're a very loyal fan. You've probably seen our teams. Fans they pick and choose when they only support a club. From my time in ONU, every game, every season, it doesn't matter. When we've struggled, you've always been behind the team and behind the club. So when people say to you that Spurs are a small club and they have a small history, and there is no history really, what would you say back to that?
Well, to be honest, people don't know the history unless you're my age. We're on the 60s now. But you actually touched on the Premier League there. Actually, when the breakaway from the Premier League happened in 1992, that was the funniest football as I know it.
Yep.
Because that was as bad as the breakaway or the attempted breakaway last week.
Yep.
The only thing they done, which was different from the Super League breakaway, the attempted Super League breakaway, was they consulted with fans in 1992. Plus, they had the FA behind them because the FA and the English Football League weren't getting on already together well at the time, and the FA backed them. And it's the same teams that instigated the breakaway from. I mean, Everton were one of them, Liverpool, Manchester United, and Spurs. That was the three teams or the four teams that actually basically broke away from the English, and that hammered football for me because it became a money. Rupert Murdoch then stepped on, throwing millions at them, and that turned football from a sport to a business. And it destroyed everything because I mean, when I was watching Tottenham, I mean, they're talking about Tottenham not having a history. Tottenham's the first non-league and the only non-league club ever to win the FA Cup in 1901.
1901.
You know what I mean? And they are a while back at the start of every decade for the 01. Anytime there's a one, they seem to want something, which I hope works for us tomorrow because this is 2021.
Yep.
Spurs, you couldn't have touched Spurs in the 60s. You know, I mean, they won the double in 61. They won the FA Cup 62. They won the European Cup Winners' Cup in 63. First British team ever. They were back at it in 67, beat Chelsea. And then there was a bit of a break-up on the side, as I knew it at that stage. You touched on Jimmy Greaves, probably the best I've ever watched. You know, he was like a chess player.
Mickey, better than Harry Kane? Would he came up in that bracket?
Yes. I mean, Harry Kane's a great player. But I mean, don't forget, Harry Kane's playing on a billiard pitch now, a billiard table. These boys were playing in bog fields. When the ball hit the ground, it was sticking in the mud.
Yeah.
And I always described him as a chess player because he was 3 moves ahead of everybody. I mean, you're talking about players running and they finding gaps. Greaves had and another great man, funny enough, was Terry Sheringham. He had a great head on him too, for reading the game, But Spurs, that Spurs side that I knew of and followed when I was younger, they broke up. Basically, it was the demise, and then they had a lean time, the late 60s, but they came roaring back in the 70s again, And I think between 71 and 74, well, they won the League Cup in 71. Mm-hmm. They won the UEFA Cup in 74. It was the first actual final.
71, 72, wasn't it, Mickey?
Aye, 72.
No, I think it was 74. Maybe it was. They played Wolves. And how I know because my dad was a buddy of Wolves fan, simply because when he worked in England, he went to all the home matches with my Uncle John. So I mind watching the match. And actually, funny enough, we actually had a colour TV for the first time, which was brilliant, watching the match. And we never got to watch football in the early 60s. We had the first TV we ever had in the house was from Radio Randall's. And we found enough, we got ITV, we got BBC Two, but we could never get BBC One. And at that time, Match of the Day was shown on BBC One, and we never got it because we hadn't got. My dad probably hadn't got the money to buy a decent TV, obviously, in the times. Yep. He was working twice, he was working most of us, and then he was going down de-waxing cars and keeping the locomotives. But finally along came, I think maybe in 1969, 70, a program called The Big Match, which was on Sunday afternoon, and it was produced by London Weekend Television. Now, at that time, ITV had all regional stations. So, lucky enough, ITV Northern Ireland showed the London Weekend Television show, which was based around all London clubs. So, basically, nearly every Sunday, you had a Spurs match. Highlights only, But Spurs were a great team. And funny enough, I was sad to see Jimmy Greaves leaving. He went to West Ham, And funny enough, there's a great story about him. He actually, I think he scored. I actually followed him a wee bit at that time because I always followed him as a player. So I watched a few West Ham matches. But on his debut, I think he scored 3 or 4 goals. They won 5-1.
Yeah.
But it was supposed that at that time there was a rumor that funny enough, it was a part exchange. We got Martin Peters in return. It was a part exchange deal, who turned out to be a great player for Tottenham.
Yeah.
But for anybody to say that Spurs hasn't got a history, I mean, have you beat Spurs in the 60s? And as you touched on, Gareth, the FA Cup then was more important than one in the old Division 1 now. It was only live match that was shown every season. And you get up at 9 in the morning on a Saturday,
right,
and it was shown on TV, and you watch the players getting their breakfast. It was a whole day show.
That's
you
right,
watched them on the bus. I mean, that was the
bigger in the Champions League final, Maggie.
Oh, was surely at that time that was the match, and I mean that was every player's ambition.
Yep.
They play in a final at Wembley. It was, and that was worldwide audience. And people forget too. There's over 700 teams that take part in the FA Cup every year. There's preliminary rounds that start in the summer. And it's the oldest competition in the world, and to me, the most prestige competition.
Yeah,
at that time, when teams were playing, they weren't playing. You hadn't the players playing from. I mean, at that time, players nowadays are spoiled little rich kids. You know what I mean? You can't talk to a player, or you approach you to his agent, or then the agent has a word with the chairman. Have you had him done have you had a spoke out of turn in the likes of Matt Busby, Joe Mercer, Man City, Bill Nicholson, Tottenham?
Yeah.
Even
moving on the years, the likes of Ferguson, Ferguson probably couldn't stay in the job now as long as he did back then. We've seen since Wenger and Ferguson's left it. We even seen Pochettino towards the end. It was wearing, he done so many good things for that team, and eventually it ran out. Then we see Klopp now this season. It looks very similar, after winning the Premier League and Champions League. That 5 or 6 years in football now seems like 25 or 30 years ago. So it is changing a lot, and I think it's great that you bring up the Champions League. Premier League breakaway in 1982. It's very similar to what's happened this week, and it changes.
Distortion at that time, and I mean, they're crying now. And to be fair, the Super League, in my opinion, it's only kicking the can down the road, because it's going to come in some shape, form, or fashion.
Yep.
I think if they had put it out to consultant fans, they would have probably got a lot of very, very favourable feedback.
See, to be honest, Mickey, I think
they want to do it the right way. But the biggest problem was Spurs and Real Madrid and Barcelona are in financial trouble at the moment.
Yeah.
And they were looking to start it like this season, or the start of next season, and that was to get themselves 300 million each.
I don't know about you, but I think the fact there's no relegation from it was a big nail in its coffin. If there had been like a qualification process for it fairly, you might have seen it get more support, because I don't think there's that many people that are enjoying the Champions League anymore until it gets to the quarterfinal. Like me and my dad sat down and watched PSG and Bayern Munich, 2 great games, but we're having it with April to see that. Why should that not be happening throughout the season a lot more? And just going to move it on, lads. But some really good stuff there for me. Gareth, your favorite memory, or your favorite game, your favorite match, your favorite moment as a Spurs fan, since you started supporting them, what would it be?
Oh, well, as I say, my first memory was that FA Cup final, but I think
I'm just getting a cup of water, please.
I think my favourite menu had to be the Champions League semi-final, which is like recent memory.
What team on top, Mickey has?
For me, that was the best match I've ever seen, a Spurs game.
Yeah,
they come back.
Yeah.
They come back needing 3 goals in the second half away from home at that Ajax stadium, which was jammed their rafters with Ajax fans. That for me was the best Spurs match that I've ever watched.
It's crazy because I seen the video the other day again, and the keeper actually kicks it. There's a header goes over the bar from a corner, and you think that's it. and the keeper actually kicks it out at like 94-40. There's only 5 minutes out of it. You think there's no way a goal's going to happen at that stage. You've almost give up.
I mean, like the fact that it was the last kick of the game, and even
Like Tottenham on the header, man.
That's right. And the previous round to that was nearly as good when we beat Man City.
That's right.
That's right.
You know, and
that was in the stadium too, and you know.
That's it, you know. But no, for me, that's in recent history. Even just watching it live, you know what I mean. I watched, you know, the cup finals and the other finals that I've watched were good. And even though Spurs got the biggest disappointment for me was not they won that Champions League.
Yeah,
because they were more than capable.
Yeah, the better team in the night. The handball. We could talk about that all night, but
I don't think it was a great final at all.
I don't think that night none of the teams played well.
Yeah,
no, but I know what you're saying, but to be fair, we played the better football. We get hit with soccer points in the end, and I think the penalty just killed the game, like, and that's just the way it was, like that night.
Yeah, the penalty set the tone for the whole match.
Yeah. I think, Jared, what about you? Favorite moment?
I would the same as your daddy, but you know, being a Spurs fan, that's the thing about it. We've been spoiled. Hey, we have been spoiled with great moments. Ricky Villa scoring that wonder goal was unreal. I mean, like Gareth, we were only bats of wins. Mickey, you wouldn't have been that all either. You would have been our legs or drinking in a bar. But you know, that the way he turned and took that ball 2-3 men and then put it in the bottom corner. You know, that was
amazing. Jared, what I remember about that match mostly was, do you mind Hoddle's chip for Jared Grisco?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That for me was better than the goal. But, you know, because
as I say, we were spoiled. I remember, like, I've been to most North London derbies because, as you know, I'm in the Lamma Valley Spurs, and we went to nearly all the Arsenal matches. The one me and your dad went to a Liverpool match. Liverpool were up. They won the league that year. They had Torres, they had Carragher, Gerrard, they had Suarez wasn't playing, but they had a son. Steve Benitez was managing them. Me and your daddy went to watch him, and Benny Acado scored the first, and then Bassong. Remember, Gareth, the place went clean mad. We beat Liverpool 2-1 that day, and Liverpool were popped. It was the start of the season, like, you know, it was one of the loveliest days we ever had.
Funny enough, funny story. I actually watched that game with Kieran Preston. He's actually in the chat. I think you two went over to London, and I think he ended up taking me out. They went to the Metro, and he was nearly put out during the first game actually because Michael Owen made his debut for Man United. So he just about got to see the game, and I made him slavering. The bar was absolutely packed with Liverpool fans. You know, Liverpool were going to win the league that year. United had just won, and Kieran actually managed to get himself in a bit of a bar that day actually, but he managed to get down to watch the game. And I was getting told that it was a matter of keeping the score down. And as you say, Spurs had played them off the park that day. I think Liverpool got a lucky penalty, and that was about it. You know, Spurs really.
They did rally in the second half, mind you. They did rally in the second half, but Modric was unreal that day. He just run that whole, and like Wagner says, he was too small to play in the Premier League, and like we seen him firsthand, it was amazing. I seen him. See, even Robbie Keane. Like, I mean, I think one of my favorite. Guess what? I'm going to get that was the favorite game I ever watched was. Mind though, I was over at the one that Keane had. We beat Arsenal 2-0. Keane had the guard around for his jaw. I mean, he had the guard around his head, and he bent it. He bent what? No, he scored a header. No, I was over that game. Because you see Arsenal games, you never see an atmosphere. Arsenal games are unreal. Like, even the fans outside, it's intimidating. You know, you watch Green Street and you watch all them other things. Them Fulhams, like, it's as close as you come to rivalry. It's as tense.
Welcome, Stevie. I'll just shout out. What do you call Mickey? Coming to you. You know, what was your best memory as a Spurs fan? You know, what's your favorite moment or your favorite game?
Well, I would say it has to be the Man City Spurs Cup final. I mean,
1981.
Tell
us about that game, Mickey. Tell us about that game.
Well, the match on a Saturday was a disaster. It ended up 1-1. It was the most boring match ever watched as an FA Cup final. What happens is that, matter of fact, there was an own goal scored, and I suppose they didn't score that day. But the replay of that Thursday from start to finish was unbelievable. I mean, first 10 minutes alone was unbelievable. You just knew they were going at each other, and it never stopped. To be fair, to the end. And funny enough, when Spurs went through to ahead, going by memory, I think Man City brought on Dennis Stewart, who actually played for Derry City when Derry City went back into the league in 1985. And I got this age, you thought Man City was going to win it because Stewart came on and he just controlled the midfield.
Yeah.
You know, it took Spurs by total surprise. Why Man City never started him, I'll never know.
I know.
But and funny enough, I was talking to that night. Jared went down. They left the three boys, Falco, Galvin, and Muller.
Yeah.
Down to the bench to bring up the Granny Honest. Galvin and Muller played in that team.
Yeah.
I mind asking Tony Galvin because I was asking him about the goal that Ricky scored, and he says, well, he actually got the. He actually says, I think he says that it was Roberts made a great block on the 18-yard line, passed it to him, and he says he went for the wing and he drew two players with him, you know. And he says, I didn't know where I was going with the ball, but he said, all of a sudden I looked to my right and I seen Villa. And he says it was just like slow motion. You know, he says he just went around one player, two player, three. He said it was unbelievable. And that's for Tony Galvin person, that's his biggest. I mean, if you asked him, he was nearly crying that night. He told me, he said it was unbelievable. The actual move. And he actually touched on Glenn Hoddle's pass to and Ardiles had a great game that day too. I mean, Ardiles set up Villa's first goal.
Yeah.
Great wee dribble past two players, you know. But I mean, they were a fantastic team. Then Birkinshaw, who was, I think Terry Neal came on in 1974 after Bill Nicholson left, and he was an Arsenal man.
Yep.
And nobody talked to him. But he had his assistant manager was Keith Birkinshaw at the time. Spurs had a bad season, I think, in 75. They just avoided relegation by the skin of their teeth, and then they went down in 76. And actually, at the end of 75, they got rid of Terry Neal. I think actually he went to Arsenal to manage Arsenal.
I think he's actually one of Arsenal. I know he was a great Arsenal player, but I think
he was a Belfast man. He was actually.
I think as manager, but he was very poor. I think he won an FA Cup, but overall, he didn't have a great time at Arsenal. And eventually, he was moved on before.
Well, they moved him. I think of a don't remember. I think Spurs sacked him anyway, and they brought on Birkinshaw. He was an assistant manager anyway, and he built a great team. I mean, Alan Gazine, Martin Chivers,
right,
Peters, Alan Mullery, Perryman, John Pratt. The players they had then. They still had Pat Jennings, which I think was actually Birkinshaw's biggest mistake. He got rid of Jennings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They ended up going to Arsenal,
Tony Parks come on then, didn't he, or something? I think it was Tony Parks. I think Tony Parks come on then, didn't he?
No, it was a boy called Barry Dans or Barry Danes.
Barry Danes.
He was a young keeper at the time, and that's the reason I think Birkinshaw favoured him, But to be fair, Birkinshaw built a fantastic team. In '78, they brought Osvaldo Ardiles and Ricky Villa, which actually was probably in them days. I mean, it was all British, English, Irish, Scotch, Welsh players. I think Spurs was one of the first teams. I mean, foreign players were few and far between them. And at that time, they were coming off the back of a World Cup one. And I mean, that was like, in today's terms, like signing Messi. Well, I mean, it was massive news worldwide,
Yeah. Plus, they were here at the time of the Falklands War too, and it wasn't easy for them. That
happened around 82 or so now.
The second final, that's right.
They were getting serious abuse in the away games, which is, of course, is understandable, you know what I mean? I mean, and again, the Spurs were fantastic. It seems to always be, the start of a decade, Spurs, 60s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s for 5 years, the 80s for 5 years, Unfortunately, we skipped the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
We must out in them for some reason. But
well, do you know what, lads? We've got that's the positivity tomorrow. It's a cup final. It's 2000. It's as you say, the year ends on 1. So let's be positive. Suppose for me, boys, my first. I suppose my first live game. I'm going to let my dad actually talk about that. You can tell him all about it. There's a wee bit of a funny story behind it as well.
The first live game, Mickey, do you mind? We went with a Glen Gormley's Man United supporters club. The band was playing in a hotel in Manchester for the club. And,
that was
we went to,
and
we went over.
That was actually the Kerry Duff Man United supporters. And funny enough, John White that runs that club, believe it or not, wrote this book here. Book. Great book.
Let's get
was that your first match? Young Gareth, was that your first match?
That was my first match.
Was you and Patrick?
Yeah. Was that the 2004-05 season?
We were sitting.
These were right behind Redknapp, who was on Sky Sports.
No, we were sitting we were at the back of the Stratford end, and there was like executive boxes right behind us, and the box behind us had 3 for Spurs fans in it, but they were surrounded by like thousands of Man United fans. And I mind there was a young fella sitting beside our Gareth. I asked him not to wear the Spurs top, but of course he puts it on under his jumper. So
that's
I was only about 7. I think about 7 at the time.
And Patrick was there too at that time.
The fella next, the wee boy sitting next to him, happened to say, "Who's your favourite player then?" He turns around and says, "Jermaine Defoe," and whoops the top. And then when Gina scored a wonder free kick that day, I'll never forget, it was a belter free kick. United had scored first, and the boys, the 3 fans that was in the box behind us, were getting wild abuse off the Stratford end. But then Gina scores that free kick later on. They came from with 1 each, and I lifted him up on the shoulders and right in front of the box, and he whoops up his top. The middle of the Stratford end, a Spurs top, and the 3 Spurs boys in the box.
Going mental.
Oh, they were funny.
What do you mean about it, Gareth, yourself?
So your first match was at Old Trafford.
I mind him having the helmet when Gina scored that free kick. But and I think at the time, so United were one of the best teams. They were probably the best team in the league at that time. I think Jose, funny enough, just come on that season. No, as I said, that would be my memory of the first live game. And I suppose, Gareth, come back to you. Talk about some of the lows. What was the lowest point for you as a Spurs fan?
As I say, losing that Champions League final for me was the lowest point. And then after that, like a death in the family when I heard Pochettino said, that was like the lowest point as a Spurs fan for me was when Pochettino said.
What about you, Jared?
I mean, the only time I've ever felt the way I felt now with Mourinho being our manager was the time that Christian Gross landed on the TV with a tube ticket and said that he was going to bring Tottenham back to the basics and we were going to do this. And I remember watching them and going to myself, "Oh, suffering Jesus, where did they get this boy?" You know what I mean? But and then I think the other thing that I ever felt low was I would say Venables getting the sack, that rock between him and Sugar and Neil Ruddock, he took a whole stance, and we had a good side then. They broke it up with Paul Stewart, but sold to Liverpool.
Well, to be fair, Sugar shafted Venables for $3.5 million.
I'm not debating that, Mickey, but I'm just saying, we had a great side that time too.
Oh, it was great team. It was took away, like we sold off the assets, and I don't rate Sugar either, to be fair to him, but Potch was, I'm a Gareth too. We never, we seen him through the highs and lows. We never seen. We always played good football. We'd always players, but Potch give us that something different. Something different as Spurs fans. We fell in love with him and that passion that. We're all Irishmen. We've got that passion. Argentinians have it, maybe not as much as the Englishman, but and he showed us
and they showed the players they believe in themselves, you know, and they get shafted by Levy's chairman.
I think the thing about it as well, when Pochettino was there, you almost felt like he was a Spurs fan as well. You know, he really loved the club, and you know, he was very passionate, as you say. Mickey, coming to you, what would your lowest point be? Is it, you know, the lowest point you've ever felt as being a Spurs fan?
Probably the relegation. I would say 76. You know, I mean, I think they've been in the top flight for 30 years at that stage, and they just narrowly avoided it the year before.
Yeah.
And then, especially it was Keith Burgenshaw's first season, but they come straight back up. To be fair, you know, and they went on to great things after that, you know. But that was probably my lowest point. And the second one was probably I don't know many times at White Hart Lane, but I never saw Spurs win. Except, believe it or not, the last time that I went to Hart Lane, which was 2016, we were playing Aston Villa, Monday night match.
Yeah.
Me and John McVough went over, and
3-1 Spurs.
3-1. Dembele scored, I think, in the first 3 minutes.
Every time I used to hear you were going to Spurs, I used to say, "Oh Jesus, no."
That was actually
something like he went 17 times, and you had like 1 win, 3 draws, and like 14 defeats.
That's right.
That's it.
And Uncle was saying he used to go to all the Chelsea games, and we never beat Chelsea, and he used to. I think the nail in the coffin was the last game. They won at Flow, but then he beat us something like
4-0.
He scored a hat trick or something.
He could finish. Suppose, lads,
But
for
I
me,
have a 100% record of the new stadium at the moment, you know. So happy
you know what,
days.
about
Got off
that,
to a good start there.
the lowest point for me was probably
that was my lowest point, you know. Definitely the relegation, you know. And I was a bit sad to see Poch going too at the time, you know. But I think Poch caught Daniel Levy by surprise, because I think when Poch was put on, I mean, when Innick came on and took over in 2001, they actually didn't get full control of the club till about 2009.
Yeah.
As in 85% of the shares, and that's really when Levy went. I mean, Innick's an investment company, so the first thing they were going to go for was infrastructure, which they've done. I mean,
like you were just how
the difference in Tottenham in the last 20 years is unbelievable, you know.
We're going to be coming to Yannick in about 5 or 10 minutes.
The lowest point, definitely relegation.
I would say the lowest point for me, you know what? The day Leicester left the league, because I really thought that season we should have won it. Yeah. Not so much that we were better than Leicester. I just thought that we threw away a lot of points that year. You talked about that great goal, Spurs, but or Drew Arsenal 2-2, that great Harry Kane goal. You know, Spurs were 2-1 up against 10 men that day, and I really think if they had seen that game out, you know, it could have been different that year. I think they would have went top if they had won that. You know, and that was the chance they missed that day, and they never really recovered. But I think that day Leicester lifted it. The Champions League was disappointment, but I thought that, you know, we got to the final, and you know, on the day both teams didn't really turn up. But I thought that season that we played such good football. You know, the way the first 4 games of the season, we only 3 points, and the last 4 games, we only got 1 point. You know, if you take out them 8 games, is where we really messed up that season. But that was the one for me. I really thought that we should have won it that year. Boys, moving on, going to focus on how things are currently now. As we know, Mourinho was sacked this week. Mikey, I'm going to come back to you right away because I know you were a big Mourinho fan. You really backed him, you know, even when a lot of fans were turning on him. So do you think it was the right decision to sack him?
Definitely not, no. I mean, number one, I think you've got to go back to pre-Di Marino even entered the Bolton. When they brought Poch on, Daniel Levy was caught by his pants for him, because Daniel Levy came on there and he gave Poch a 5-year plan, and he didn't really. I believe that Levy believed that Poch wasn't going to. Poch actually overachieved with the squad he had, and I think he really took Levy, and the board be surprised. You know, I mean, Levy would have been happy with a couple of top 4 finishes over 5 years, and it ended up that they were challenging, as you say, for the title. You know, and I think it caught, because at that stage, I'm convinced that Innick were more interested in the stadium and the infrastructure, getting that right. And I'm sure Daniel Levy has a plan after spending £1 billion. I mean, you don't spend £1 billion and then forget about your team. So I think that's the next part of the plan. But going back to Mourinho, they bring a man on that's a serial winner. A serial winner. I mean, his history speaks for itself. And not these 11 spent money is unbelievable. I mean, most of these signings were loan signings. He was looking for 2 centre halves, which is badly needed. In my opinion, they have to replace the whole back line.
Mackie, there's also rumours as well that he didn't want Bale. So do you think that this is an our problem?
I mean,
we've seen this before with Levy signing players that the manager doesn't want.
Well, I mean, I disagree with that. If you're going to let a man manage a club, no matter who he is, let him manage and let him pick his players. I mean, they're paying Gareth Bale something like 300 grand a week. Now, as far as I'm aware, talking to Paul Muller, who I'm sort of pretty friendly with, I don't talk to him that much, but I got a chat to him actually about that particular thing, and he was hearing that at the time Mourinho wanted the money spent on 2 centre halves.
I think he wanted Skriniar from Inter Milan, didn't he? He really wanted him.
Well, it doesn't matter who you want. I mean, I'll tell you what, Peppa Pig would do better than one by having the money. You know what I mean? So, but the fact of the matter is that, and Levy brought Bale again to appease us silly Spurs fans. Bring an old favourite back. Do you know what I mean? That'll do the Spurs fans for another couple of years, because Spurs, in my opinion, have no intention of spending. Number one, they haven't got the money, they spend the money. The servers are debt alone, they're borrowing of the government.
Yeah.
Which is a major story,
Yeah,
floating the stock market or something. But I mean, that's a great number. I didn't think Mourinho was given. I mean, he came in November, basically half the season gone. The pandemic hit, which wasn't good for any team. Any chance that they had of buying a player was out the window financially when the turnstile stopped and the turnover stopped.
Yep.
And they get him. I mean, for me, for the cup final tomorrow, there's no better man to have in your corner than Mourinho for a one-off match.
Yeah.
I sincerely hope Tottenham won it tomorrow. But you're going up against one of the world's best managers.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Because they're rookie walking out. For me, that's only my personal opinion. I mean, Mourinho can mastermind a cup one. He's done it. At every club he's been at, even at Manchester United.
We'll have to bring you back on for the Tuesday.
He wasn't back. The bottom line is he wasn't back. As Poch wasn't back. I mean, the cracks were already shown, and they were masked over by a super Champions League run that we got to get the final. But from January of that year, Spurs never won an away match.
Yep. No, very, very.
Their league form was brutal. Poch had been steady on the levy on the board about he needs the team's finished, and then he brings in Mourinho. They basically say, "Can you get more out of these boys? Can you get a wee bit more?" And he's going to do the same next year. I mean, their next manager. I know who their next the next manager they need is actually a guy, and because probably the job description is going to read manager required for top club in London. Must be able to get the best out of present squad, spend no money, and perform a miracle. So he's going to have to get on a flight to Jerusalem, because the boy he's looking for was last seen in 33 AD, and he's called Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the only guy that's going to.
I agree with I agree with someone.
Tottenham at the minute, in the state that Daniel Levy has them on. No doubt about it.
Yeah, Christopher Preston agrees with you, Mickey. He thinks that Jose would have been the best way to go tomorrow, and he feels that Man City will be too strong now. Gareth, coming to you, it's been a known fact that Levy has wanted Mourinho for a long time at Spurs. Mourinho's stock was a lot higher 10 years ago, and he probably had better offers. And do you think that Levy was maybe just almost mesmerised by Mourinho's achievements at our clubs, that he hired him on that and not on the present day? Mickey's saying that he would have felt more confident with Mourinho in charge tomorrow. But I know from talking to you at times that you feel that Mourinho maybe lost some more players, and if the players aren't behind him, then it doesn't really matter how good you are as a manager, because you're only as good as your players on the day. So What's your thoughts on the sacking? And also as well, when we come to Enoch and Levy, it divides Spurs fans' opinions that they've done so well, in terms of the infrastructure, the stadium. But as Decky Durry, a big Spurs fan, he comes on this podcast before, reminds me, he's not interested in how good the pizzas taste, or we don't support the club because of a fancy training ground or a fancy stadium. We ultimately support the club because we want to win trophies and we want to see good players and we want to see managers that we love being backed properly. So, what would your thoughts be on some of them things?
I think Mourinho got maybe 4 months longer than he would have got if the fans were on the stadium, because he wouldn't have seen past that Chelsea game at home. It's the worst I've ever seen Spurs play, ever. I don't agree with Mickey at all about Mourinho. I think there's worse squads in the Premier League that's doing far better than Spurs. And for me, Mourinho was never a fit. Pochettino should never have been sacked, number one. But it's a player issue, but I mean, you have to be able to motivate your players, and the more you can't motivate your players by calling them out on live TV. That's just not the way that it works anymore. Yeah. You've got to be do things on house, and Mourinho was never a fit for Spurs, never. Football wise, Mourinho has played the same football with every team that he's been with, and had there been Spurs fans on that ground, the stadium, he wouldn't have got half the time he got, because they'd have been booed off every game. I mean, you couldn't watch it. You could not watch it. And as far as Levy and Enoch goes, I do agree with Mickey in the sense as you don't put up £1 billion and a club without having the next player plan coming on. And I think the pandemic maybe blows that up. It came at the wrong time, because me and you went to the Spurs Stadium and it is a money-making machine. Because they bus you in free. We get a free bus outside our hotel. It takes you, bypasses the Tottenham High Road and takes you right in the stadium. They've got music on 2 and 3 hours before the game. You have the game, then you stay 2 hours afterwards. The bars, I mean, it's cleaning up. It's an unbelievable stadium. Probably as the best.
Here saying he thinks that the players will get missing everything tomorrow, and for that reason he thinks Spurs will win, so he disagrees with Christie. Gareth, one more thing. We sense now that they've built the stadium, the training ground. As Mickey said, the infrastructure is there now. And Spurs have been finishing higher up the table. But do you feel that Enoch are under huge pressure now over the next 5 years in terms of Levy as well? That he sacked Pochettino, the Spurs fans adored. He brought in Mourinho, it hasn't worked out. We've talked about managers before. He's brought in Spurs have seen a lot of managers under Levy, and the best ones have been almost like second choice. Martin Yule was Stantini's assistant. Harry Redknapp was only coming on after Ramos. Was meant to be the next big thing. That didn't work out. He sacked Redknapp and brought AVB in. That didn't work. And he only brought Pochettino in because Van Gaal turned the job down to go to United. So there's a long line of real failure in there as well. And you talk about the 2 trophies in 20 years that, especially with you seen the protest outside the ground, it wasn't as big as the Arsenal one. But do you sense that over the next 5 years now that Enoch and Levy really need to step their game up? They need to start backing the next manager that comes in. He needs to get proper backing.
Well, I mean, I thought Mourinho was well backed in the transfer window, to be honest. I mean, I didn't think they would do as much business as they did. And I know he was looking for 2 centre-halves, which he should have got, because they're badly injured. But go back to Levy. I don't think you can sack a chairman. I mean, the owners are Levy's making a profit year in, year out for Spurs. And that's all they look at. You don't sack a man year after year after year. And until Spurs were never a club that shelled out millions for top players. They never did it. You know what I mean? And I don't see it.
The feeling among some Spurs fans now is though that they consider themselves to be in that top bracket. No, not so much as just finishing top 4, but they really believe that they're only a few players away. Well, under Pochettino, they might only been maybe 1 or 2 players away from being a real title contender every season. Obviously you need to rebuild squads, but now that they've dropped further back, and I'm not saying that so much the owners are going to be, because Levy's got a share in Spurs himself. But in terms of the fans, can you see it turning a bit more toxic towards the board if things don't improve in the next 2 years?
No, I don't. Well, you see, the pandemic had a really bad time for Spurs, because, as I say, I think after building that stadium, they were the intention was they would go out and spend the same as Alexa, United, Liverpool, so on. Yeah. So it had a really bad time, and it's cost. I mean, financially wise now, like as Mickey says, they would be in trouble. I think.
Yeah.
So I don't see them spending big money, and I do see the fans turning on Levy. I do.
Yeah.
I see that down the line. Not too far away, probably. We'll see.
Yeah, I think the Pochettino thing, and Pochettino was only won this Champions League as well. It's going to turn really sour, I think. Jared, coming to you. Your thoughts on the Mourinho second? Enoch, your thoughts on Levy and Enoch, and hey, to be honest, I was happy when Bale came back, but if the manager doesn't want him, you have to back the manager. We've seen it with Pochettino that he wanted certain players like Mane, and he was giving him Kuru, chalk and cheese. Why are managers not being backed properly at Spurs? What do you put that down to?
Well, basically, just answering your last question there, Levy never backed none of his managers ever. We had the best manager we ever had in our history from Balmac with Pochettino, and at the end of the day, Pochettino guaranteed him top 4 every year. Even when Liverpool were poor, we still got to finish above them and got our top 4 apart from maybe 2 seasons. You know what I mean? When he was there. Levy took a decision. The Amazon cameras come on. They built a world-class stadium. Levy took a decision saying, what can't do what we need him to do is to win us a trophy. I'm going to get Jose Mourinho one. And as everybody knows at the time that Jose went back for his second stint at Chelsea, Levy tried to get him in.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't. He says he would never manage Spurs.
Jared, you see the same as well with Bale. He's been fascinated. They bring Bale back. He was fascinated. They bring Mourinho as well, and he did it at times where Bale's past his best, Mourinho's past his best. Some of these decisions are costing managers' jobs. I'm not saying that Mourinho's failure was down to the Bale signing, but if he really wanted that money spent elsewhere, then that's a big issue because the next manager comes in is going to have the same problem.
Of course, but sure, the writing was on the wall for Mourinho. As you chatted about at the start, about players nowadays, Mickey, you said players are not the same no more. You see the time at Jose Mourinho at Chelsea, he had John Terry, through the Spanish team, he had John Terry, he had Frank Lampard. Them 2 boys he idolised. He never said a bad word about them. When he went to United, criticised Luke Shaw, criticised Paul Pogba, and other players. And that was his downfall at United. He won 2 cups, but what he done was he left the players out to dry. And the Spurs boys knew what was going to happen when they started doing that. He done it with Dele Alli, calling was it Dele Alli's brother or Dele Alli. Now I understand Dele Alli had a bad blip them 2 years. He's a young fella. Ericsson left us. You know what I mean? That team was getting broke up, but at the end of the day, Mourinho's only himself to blame. I don't like him.
I can sense that. Mikey, coming back to you. You always say
you don't like him, Jared. I think you do like him.
Mikey, coming back to you. One thing I do agree with is I think these players have let managers down. They've let Pochettino down. They've let Mourinho down at times. I don't agree with everything Mourinho did in terms of criticising them because I do think that modern day management, I'm not saying I agree with it. I do think you should still be able to do them type of things, but the reality is you can't do it anymore. And he was never going to get away with doing it. We've seen it happen to Chelsea with Fabregas and Willian and some of players. We've seen it at United with Shaw and Pogba, and we've seen it here as well. There was a story about Alderweireld. He was very loyalty. Apparently, he begged them to miss pregnancy of his wife or something like that, and then he dropped them a week later. Stuff like that's not going to go down well. So, Mikey, I do agree with the players not being good enough. I agree with my father as well that they should still be doing better than what they are. But some of them ain't good enough. So where are you at the minute with Spurs? Do you think that the future can be bright? And what's your thoughts on Enoch and Levy? Not in terms of the infrastructure, but when it comes to managers, recruitment of players, and where we are at the minute as a club.
Well, Daniel Levy's a very hard man to second guess. But Daniel Levy, come on, just touching the infrastructure very, very quickly. First 20 years, Enoch is an investment company. Number one, you can't compete with the likes of Manchester United in transfer markets if you have a 36,000-seater stadium. That had to go into place in order for Spurs to compete. Unfortunately, the pandemic has hit, and it'll probably be 5 years before you'll see a full Tottenham Hotspur stadium again, which is going to hit them with turnover. At an educated guess, I would say Ryan Mason will be manager next year. Because who is going to take that job? They've seen the way. Will he love or hate Mourinho? Love or hate Poch? It doesn't matter. Previous managers, all these world-class managers are looking on, and they know what they're going on for with Levy, and they're weary of it. And I mean, you can't bring a man. If they bring one, that German manager they're talking about bringing him now, I mean, he's coming. And number one,
Mackie, I agree. What's going to be different between him and AVB? You know, I know you can't compare two managers, but you're going back again to a similar project where you're going to be a young manager, you know, and you're going to have to back him again. So again, we're going around in circles, and I agree. And boys, look, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to move it on because we're on the last night.
I think Joe Lewis is going to sell the club. You see what happened there with that Super League? This has just created a monster now. Yeah. These American, I know we're not American investments, but I think this has just created a monster. We're going to see a lot of bad stuff happen over the head of this.
Jared, I think my dad makes a fantastic point, and the problem that we have now with owners, not just Spurs. I'm just fearful of us going down the same way as Arsenal. We're self-sustaining. As long as the club is making money, they'll not be too much of an ambition. They push for the major trophies.
But the problem is
challenge for the Premier League and challenge for the Champions League.
The club isn't making money at the moment, which is going to cause problems for the next manager. That's why, I mean, for Levy, they bring on a manager next year. No matter what he does, he's going to have to pay off the club that he takes the manager out of.
Yeah.
And is Ryan Mason sitting? And if Daniel Levy and Joe Lewis are sitting in his big boat in the Bahamas discussing it, it's costing nothing to put Ryan Mason in charge. If they're not going to buy players, he's the same squad.
Yeah. So well, boys, we're on their last final 15 minutes here. So one more question before we talk about tomorrow's game. One of I'll ask you who you would like to see as the next Spurs manager on a permanent basis. So, Gareth, who would you like to see as a manager of Spurs next season?
I don't know. I think Spurs need a full rebuild. The same thing happened with Tottenham. The players are getting old now, and the whole thing has changed. As I was looking at and I was listening to you, and I mind you mentioned a way back to me. And the more I think about it, the more Potter makes sense for me from Brighton.
Yeah, right.
For me, I think he knows the Premier League. He plays good football. He's young, and
he works with young players.
That's it, and they're going to have to rebuild anyway. So, I mean, like when Pochettino came on, Pochettino came from Southampton as well, and you know, experience.
And I think credit to Potter, he came from Sweden as well, and he done really well with Östersunds. He got them on the Europa League knockout stages and stuff. You know, he's definitely got a bit of pedigree about him in terms of really taking teams from down here to up here, almost like what Pochettino did.
Well, I mean, like if I had a choice now, that's I mean, I wouldn't go for any foreign managers, to be honest, you know, because
we've been down that road before.
Yeah, you're paying out big dough, and then they're coming in, and then they're signing, and it. So, but as I say, the manager's only as good as a chairman, isn't he?
Yeah.
As well, you know what I mean. So, like, it's a double-edged sword, you know. So, but my preference would be Potter.
I agree with you. I think we're going to have another Pochettino where Mickey did make a great point that I think a manager's going to have to overachieve to get Spurs fighting for them title. Challenge for you again, getting on the Champions League and being competitive again. Jared, how about you? Who would you like to see as the next Spurs manager?
Who I like to see and who Levy appoints was the thing.
Exactly. I think Levy, but if you're Daniel Levy, I'm going to give you the option. Who are you picking?
You know something, and I didn't want this guy to be the manager because I just didn't. I wasn't fond of him, but I've seen what he's done with Leicester, Brendan Rodgers. The reason being, I didn't. There's something about Rodgers. I'd seen what he done in Celtic and all, but then again, Celtic was just probably a stepping stone from coming out of Liverpool, and you know he should have won the league with Liverpool, and he done well with Celtic, but there were no competition up there. And now you've seen what he's doing with that Leicester. Young players, we all know that their academies full of fantastic young players. So somebody's going to bring him on. I don't know what Potter's records. I like Potter as a manager, but I don't know what his records like. I think Levy will probably go with his instinct because he wanted Rodgers before too, probably.
Yeah. Well, Jared, according to Alistair Gold, the four-man shortlist is Rodgers, Nagelsmann, and them two being the top two targets. And if they can't get them, it's Ten Hag from Ajax and Potter. And I think the club with Ten Hag, it's going to be, they're looking at the Ajax structure, and it's very different every other club, and they're not sure whether he would be able to do that at Spurs. And I think Nagelsmann's going to go to Bayern Munich, to be honest, which is going to leave it down to Rodgers and Potter. And I think what's going to happen with Rodgers is Leicester's going to be in the Champions League next season, and more likely than not, Spurs won't be. So I think he'll stay put, and that'll leave us with Potter. And I actually think that's, if that happened, I would be happy. Mikey, same question to you. Who would you like to see as a manager next year? And you can't reappoint Mourinho.
I would go with Jared, Brendan Rodgers. For me, would be number one. And maybe second, Eddie Howe. Well, I definitely wouldn't go for a foreign money, but my top pick would be definitely Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah, lads, only 10. It's been on for an hour and 20 minutes, and literally the most I can do is an hour and a half because I have to go somewhere after this. But 10 minutes. Then we talk about the big game tomorrow. It's been a great chat so far, and really enjoying it. Thanks for everyone's comments and coming on. Gareth, what do you think tomorrow? Are you confident going into it? I think Mikey's a bit less confident now without Mourinho. But I know from speaking to you, in my personal opinion, I'm feeling a bit more confident. How do you see tomorrow's game? Oh, I think he's froze. No, is it? Can you hear me now?
Aye.
Go ahead.
No, I think I'd be more confident now that Mourinho's been sacked. I think he had lost the team, lost the players. They weren't playing for him.
Yeah.
And they had just stopped playing. So now maybe missing is a fairy tale story. Like 4 years ago, that fellow was fighting for his life.
Mm-hmm.
He's at Spurs since he was 8. And I would love to see him win it.
There was an element that Mickey says the year ends on one. This fairy tale story could have been written in the stars for missing. And he nearly lost his life. That this is going to be a big thing for him. I don't know.
See, I mean, football can be full of greed and full of all people making money, but it can also be full of great stories. And I'll tell you what, to see if missing was they left that cup with Spurs and all that, it would be one of the best stories ever.
Yeah, throwing this back at you, right? If Spurs really won the cup tomorrow and they would have won their last 5 games of the season, do you think missing should be given it on a full-time basis?
I wouldn't see why not. I mean, if he was to won that cup and won his last 5, whether that's enough to finish top 4 or not, I don't know. But
I think after Chelsea's won the night, that makes it very unlikely. Even if they won
the but no, I mean,
he shouldn't be punished.
Well, I mean, if he sort of does well, but even the more I think about it is the comments I made before was Spurs need a rebuild, and Weller missing's the man to do that. I would doubt.
I mean, we've seen it with Arsenal and Arteta that he's got. You look at Arteta and you think there's a manager on him, but if it's just too much for him at the moment, then because Arsenal's a massive job in terms of rebuild, I think
too much too soon for missing.
Yeah,
I would say it's far too much too soon. But I mean, best of luck to him tomorrow, and I tell you, I fancy Spurs.
We'll come back to you for your prediction for tomorrow, right? Jared, same question. Do you think we can upset the odds tomorrow? Man City are heavy favourites. Everyone's tipping them. They won. The fact that it's a rookie manager against one of the best that we've ever seen. Player for player, Man City are stronger. We've seen bigger shocks before, but it would still be quite a shock to most people if we were to pull it off. And the same question to you: if Missing won this cup tomorrow and Spurs finish the season strong, winning all the rest of their games, would you like to see him on there next season?
Well, finals are Bolton luck, which we never had our fair share of this last maybe 10, 15 years. You know something? There's 2 things to this final tomorrow. If Man City play and get all the luck and play within themselves to the team they are, they could probably beat us and probably will beat us. But the thing about it is, Harry Kane's, the likes of Harry Kane, the likes of Son, the likes of them big players that love Spurs, I think tomorrow they're going to show that they want to win this because their season lies on it now. The likes of Aurier, the likes of a couple other players that I'm not entirely happy with, I think they're away next season anyway. So it's up to the other players now that's going to have to pull us through this tomorrow. You know what I mean? And a bit of magic from Harry. Son's a great record against Man City. And as I say, we have a great record apart from league matches against Man City. So, I think I have a good feeling. But at the end of the day, I fancy. I'll tell you a score later, but
that's one thing I will say is we do have a good record against Man City. Man City and Everton are 2 teams that we've seen they'll enjoy playing, even when Man City have been successful. We've won 2 of our last 3 games against them. We put them out of the Champions League when they were, they won the treble that year domestically. So there's no reason why we should go on it and feel, we've no chance. Mickey, come on to you. Same question. Can we do it tomorrow? We're underdogs, but we still have every chance if our top players turn up. And the same thing, if Miston was they won the final tomorrow and finish the season strong, won the rest of the games, would you like to see him as a manager next season?
Well, in answer to your last question, certainly would love to see Ryan missing there. He would deserve it. But for the sake of every Spurs player worldwide or every Spurs fan, the Spurs players have to turn up tomorrow.
They owe us, Mickey, don't they? They owe us a
They
performance.
have to play for the boys. They owe Spurs fans like us a decent show tomorrow. Even they're leaving the club. They're going to a final. The people call it different names. It's a chance they won a trophy. First time since 2009. And leaving Ryan missing aside, because it'll not be Ryan's fault of the. But I mean, the first half the other night was a disgrace. Now, if they come out and start to get there,
Game over.
there's no chance. I don't care what Man City turned up, they'll turn them over. And
Might have been
for fans like us, I think the onus is on the players tomorrow. They finally come out and stand up and be counted for once this season. I think they owe that to every Spurs fan. You know, so I hope they won.
They shouldn't need any motivation.
And I certainly think I would love to see Ryan missing there, especially. I mean, at the end of the day, they're not spending money next year. Why bring on a manager?
Yeah,
young man, Spurs man through and through. Give him a chance. He's not going to do any worse.
Yeah. Last thing, lads. Obviously the game itself. Man City at the moment, they're going through a bit of a spell where you think that they're not at their best. There's rumours De Bruyne is probably not going to be fit, and if he is fit, they're not going to risk him ahead of the PSG game in the middle week. That's the one City really want. We've seen this week as well. Pep, he couldn't even get Ryan Mason's name right. He was calling him Brian. There shouldn't be any motivation, Gareth, should there be? And then players and Pep before had digs at Spurs and calling them the Hurricane team. We put them out of the Champions League, but they put them in a cup final. This would really be the one to get back at them, wouldn't it?
Aye, but as Jared says, we have a pretty good record against Man City. So I mean, even go back the first time Spurs qualified for the Champions League, it was a playoff we managed to do it. I mean, Crouch scored a lot. And even the Champions League 2 years ago, the quarter final over 2 legs. We beat them this season in the league. We've beat them.
It's a game each. If we can play like we did that day, we've every chance.
Don't get me wrong, like Man City's a top quality team, top quality. And I'll tell you what, if the right Man City turn up and they play to their potential, I don't think I'd manage what Spurs do.
I think that goes for any team playing them. They're the best team in the country.
Miles ahead of most. But I mean, it's not. Do I fancy Spurs? I do, because Man City's bigger prize is a Champions League game 2 days later. Yeah. So I mean, but hey, it's a cup final too. Anything can happen.
How do you see it going?
I fancy Spurs to open score. Man City they come back and make it 1-1, but they sort of buck a trend of this season. Spurs going first and they're losing. I think they're going to come back. They're going to win it 2-1.
2-1. Jared, what about you? How do you see it going?
I had a dream about this, and a South American's going to score the winner. Now, I put it down to Lamela. Me and your dad was chatting off air, and he thinks it'll be the Celso, but I'm just hoping it's not a nightmare, because this is Aguero's last season for City, and I'm just saying to myself, is that why I'm not seeing the end of the dream? Is it Aguero's going to score it? But no, I'm the same as your dad. It's either 2-1 or 3-1 back to the Ricky. It's going to be a Ricky Villa moment on it. This is the way it's played out in my head, and that we're going to just pop it at the end. But I'll tell you what, it's going to be more nervous in the Champions League final, because after the penalty come along, the nerves was away, like the game was destroyed. But the longer we stay in it, the longer we'll be there, and that's what you see in cup finals. And
I tell you what, see tomorrow they won that game as well. We're going to come under heavy periods of pressure at times. We're going to have to. It's going to be an awful watch for us at times. If it is tight and we're in there and we're in the league, for example. Mickey, how about you? How do you see it?
Wish I was as confident as you guys. I would love to see them win it, seriously. And I think the only way that they have a chance of winning it, overload the midfield and keep possession. Maybe they'll get the extra time, but I'll be honest, boys, I can't see Man City. I can't see another winner other than Man City tomorrow. I hope and pray. I'll take you all out for a drink with the winner, but I wouldn't be confident. Not the way Spurs playing at the moment, Man City might be in a wee blip, but they're a serious. If Man City turn up tomorrow, the real Man City.
Young Gareth made a great point there. this PSG match, you don't know what's on their mindset. It was like our first half. You see our first half.
This is the thing too. They've lost the leads there with 10 men. They are a great side, but they're beatable. When if Spurs are a better team in Leeds, player for player, we might not be playing better than Leeds at the moment.
It's a 1-minute game. It's 90 minutes, and Spurs are a great cup team, great cup side. So
I actually think that we are going to book a trend tomorrow. I think we're going to win the game 1-0. We haven't been able to hang on to 1-0 leads this season. I've just got a feeling tomorrow that I think he's going to go with Alderweireld and Dyer, and I think we're rolling the cup tide. That's our best too. It's as you said, Mickey. It's hard to pick a favourite, but I think that's
hard to call. It's hard to call.
I think that the thing about Dyer and Alderweireld, I would never question their loyalty to Spurs. I do think at times Dyer is capable of a bit of madness, but he's talked about he's spreading his ashes at the ground and stuff. I do think all them players tomorrow, they'll want to win a trophy, they'll be pumped up for it. And I'm going to go for a 1-0 Spurs.
Well, I think I'm more interested on, even if they do lose, I hope they play a good game and lose.
Well, the only thing about it is,
I think it's going to be Harry Kane's day. 1-0.
Mourinho's not going to be there. We're not going to play 5 at the back. Ryan Mason being a midfielder is going to put another midfielder in there. And that Kane probably.
That's where you're going to stop Man City in the midfield.
Yeah, thanks to Sissoko will play. I think he'll play Sissoko in there for his legs and his energy. But lads, thanks very much. It's been really, really enjoyable. We've been on here for an hour and a half, and some of the comments have been great. Funny enough, there's a lot of people tipping Spurs. They won 2-1. So maybe that's a score to go away. But lads, I enjoy the final tomorrow. I'm sure we'll not sleep too well tonight, but as you say, start watching them Man City games back because, more times than often, Spurs have been one of them ones, the big games against City. Thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll get this on, I guess, next year again for an hour cup final. Thanks very much to everyone that's watched.
If we won tomorrow, Gareth, you've been the lucky omen, we'll get an hour long going.
Boys, before you go,
FA Cup replay.
Before you go, I'll give you one last chance to say the famous phrase, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.